Father Time is a wretched man. He chips away at you with perfect cadence, with infallible stealth, and without prejudice. It can be hard to notice, but lately I've really felt myself getting older. My eyesight is getting worse, my shoulder locks up in the morning, and my memory is becoming untrustworthy. There have been times I've tried to recall precise moments from my childhood, but I can only conjure hazy visions, estimations of memories, really. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between bona fide reality and the fantasies of my subconscious. There are a few things that stick out of that fog, however. Pillars of self-actualization. I'm sure you have some too. For better or for worse, I lean on these memories because they are the only ones that truly feel real. I remember reading Hemingway for the first time. I remember taking my grandma to Bob's Big Boy and asking her about the 60s. I remember the first time I had to tell someone I didn't love them back. And I remember the first time I played PT. I hope that's not overly dramatic. If you know me in real life, you know it's not really my nature. What is, however, is overthinking, long-windedness, and an embarrassing, unjustifiable passion for Japanese video games. My name is Lincoln, and I'm sorry for what I'm about to do to you. I'm in love with something that's dead, and I spent like 2 years making this video, so you could fall in love with it too. The sooner I get started, the sooner we can be brokenhearted together. PT, which stands for Playable Teaser, the demo for the now-canceled game Silent Hills, came out 5.5 years ago. Ever since playing this game on my friend Alfredo's PS4 in my other friend Nick's garage, it has been like a splinter jammed in my fingernail, throbbing every time I think I had forgotten it. We are going to unpack everything about this teaser and look at it in the light. Beat-by-beat retelling of the plot and gameplay, the messy and public feud between Hideo Kojima, the game's creator, and Konami, the game's publisher, the implications this demo had on the Silent Hill franchise, and the colossal shakeup in the survival horror genre that followed. I assume there are two groups of people watching this. One, the other 12 humans on Earth who are still obsessed with this 30-minute-long hallway simulator birthed from Kojima's Adderall-powered brain, and two, my very supportive and loving friends and family. For group two, and maybe a bit for myself, I'd like to open up the series by describing exactly what PT was. It will be sorrowful. PT is part historical event, part good friend. I feel like I'm giving a lecture, but also giving a eulogy. Like I've said, PT was a demo released on August 12th, 2014 as a free download to the PSN store. A short trailer was debuted at Gamescom 2014. It was peculiar but enticing, less of a game trailer, more of a car accident. Violent but captivating. It showed night vision face cams of people playing and screaming at PT. Interspersed were a few curious lines like, "The only me is me," and "Will you decipher the enigma?" The more intriguing aspect of the trailer, in my opinion, came from the presentation rather than the content. There was no introduction for the clip. It played immediately after Kojima finished showing off Metal Gear Solid 5 and its brand new swimsuit modeled decoy box technology. It sort of broke into our reality, if you will. Second, after the trailer finished, Sony CEO Jim Ryan came to the stage and announced that PT was already available on the PlayStation Store for download. You could tell there was something sort of fishy going on. I'll admit I didn't get to see this moment firsthand. I didn't hear about PT until after the enigma had been deciphered, so to speak. I wasn't even a horror fan at the time. I believe I just mustered the courage to try roller coasters. Yet I doubt Kojima, Sony, and anyone else invested in the success of this demo missed my patronage. News of this strange game spread like wildfire. In a conference held just 2 weeks after its launch, Kojima announced that PT had been downloaded over 1 million times. You see, by then it had already been discovered that PT was not merely a trailer for some new horror game from a rookie developer, like it was presented as, but instead an appetizer for a new Silent Hill game. The game's alleged developer, 7780 Studios, was imaginary. Kojima Productions would be undertaking the task of injecting life into the acclaimed but recently tepid franchise. They wouldn't be doing it alone, however. It was also revealed that famed Mexican filmmaker Guillermo del Toro would be co-writing Silent Hills, and Walking Dead star Norman Reedus would play the game's protagonist. This is a turning point. This is where PT went from promising indie horror game like Amnesia and Outlast to the biggest thing to happen to survival horror since Resident Evil 4. The Silent Hill franchise had been running on Reputation for 5 games now, and fans were pessimistic that the IP would get picked up again anytime soon. Not only was there going to be a new mainline game, it was going to be made by maybe the most acclaimed video game producer outside of Nintendo. Hideo Kojima's Metal Gear series had gone a long way to legitimize video games as an art, and he understood and manipulated the medium in a way that no one else could. If you are a fan of the cerebral and grandiose, then this is a match made in gamer heaven. Looking back at this whole event, I think the intent of the trailer gets lost. It was a knot meant to be unraveled. Now, it's understandable, there's a lot of exciting things in the way, but if you want to appreciate the tragedy of this teaser, the bolt of lightning, now only known as scorched and fertile soil, then it's best to experience it the way it was intended. Let's move through this odd little game together and learn what captured so many people, both rapidly and persistently. PT is a trailer subdued. Every aspect is deliberately sparse, and it leaves you hungry for just a little bit more. I'm going to do my best to give you everything the game has given me, but I'll warn you, you won't be satisfied. The setting for this game is just 2 spaces. One is a small concrete room that has a bloody brown paper bag on the table and a door. This room is where we start our game. You also return here if you were killed or after a planned crash we will get into when we work through the gameplay. Once you walk through the door, you enter the second and more important environment, the hallway. On the surface, this is a fairly typical American house, but the darkness inhabiting it will bend reality into perverse and misshapen shadows. Domesticity is a veneer, hiding something much more disturbing. You see, there are many doors in this hallway, but none of them will let you leave. Next, let's look at our cast. The number of characters varies depending on who you are talking to. We're dealing with ghosts, spiritual influences, sentient paper bags, Norman Reedus. It's going to get complicated. Let's go through them in order of easiest to understand. In PT, you play as an unnamed man portrayed by Norman Reedus, although you don't know this until you beat the game. Your character is an outsider, the last sane man. He doesn't appear to have any connection to the setting, characters, or preceding events in the game. There are photos of a man in the hallway, but he is not nearly as seductive as Norman. There is one section of the game where the aborted fetus in the bathroom sink, we'll get to that, speaks to you in the second person, but given the context and little bits we learn from the radio later on, most people assume that this message is not directed at the player character. Your character appears to merely be an observer. Through some unknowable circumstance, he has found his way into this hell house, and he must endure punishment for something he may have no implication with. The hallway was a jail cell, seemingly designed for someone specific, much like the psychodramas of I have no mouth, but I must scream. What crime could someone commit that deserves this severe a punishment? Well, as you begin this eldritch adventure and make yourself more familiar with the hallway, it's difficult to shake the feeling that you're being watched. In classic survival horror fashion, the atmosphere is oppressive and sinister. After a few trips around, you are introduced to your stalker, Lisa. You turn the corner. You see, standing in the foyer, a gray female figure. She's enormous, maybe 6.5 feet tall, and wears a tattered white dress, soaked with dried blood on her swollen stomach. She has short black hair, appears to be wearing a high heel shoe on just one foot, and although you can't see it yet, her right eye has been gouged out. As she is revealed to you, she does not lunge or run or move any part of her. She stands still in the spotlight, daring you to proceed. The radio by the front door will occasionally come alive and tell us a story. Let's listen to what is most likely Lisa's story.
We regret to report the murder of a wife and her 2 children by their husband and father. The father purchased a rifle used in the crime at his local gun store 2 days earlier. This brutal killing took place while the family was gathered at home on a Sunday afternoon. The day of the crime, the father went to the trunk of his car, retrieved the rifle, and shot his wife as she was cleaning up the kitchen after lunch. When his 10-year-old son came to investigate the commotion, the father shot him too. His 6-year-old daughter had the good sense to hide in the bathroom, but reports suggest he lured her out by telling her it was just a game. The girl was found shot once in the chest from point-blank range. The mother, who he shot in the stomach, was pregnant at the time. Police arriving on scene after neighbors called 911 found the father in his car, listening to the radio. Several days before the murders, neighbors say they heard the father repeating a sequence of numbers in a loud voice. They said it was like he was chanting some strange spell. There was another family shot to death in the same state last month, and in December last year, a man used a rifle and a meat cleaver to murder his entire family. In each case, the perpetrators were fathers. State police say the string of domestic homicides appears unrelated, though it could be part of a larger trend such as employment, childcare, and other social issues facing the average family.
It is believed that Lisa is the mother in the first story, coldly murdered by her deranged and possibly possessed husband. This is the central event of PT and everything in the game. The nightmare dimension hallway, the murderous ghost, the seemingly bedeviled radio and fetus were born out of this immense rage and pain felt by Lisa and, possibly, her son. We will get to her son, but I said we would do this in descending order of clarity, and Jay is about as clear as a hunk of obsidian. So, let's get into the PewDiePie ghost and the talking bag of blood. The radio will play a few different broadcasts throughout the game, most of them some variation of the news we've just heard. One loop later in the game, however, sticks out. After solving a minor puzzle that reveals the message, "I can hear them calling to me from hell," you begin a loop in almost total darkness, sans one hanging light by the radio that is bright red and swinging back and forth. On the radio, we hear a Swedish language broadcast. Now, I don't mean to assume your primary language, but I'd say more people listening to me understand English better than Swedish, so I'm going to play a recording of the English translation. Here's our rendition.
Close your eyes. Let your ears listen to the radio. Do you hear my voice? Can you hear your own soul scream? Let us choose. My voice that tells the future, or your tortured mind. Well, what do you choose? You can choose. Your life, your future. Wise as you are, you might have already discovered it. Yes, the radio drama from 75 years ago was true. They are here on our Earth, and they monitor and see all. Don't trust anyone. Don't trust the police. They are already controlled by them. That's the way it's been for 75 years now. Only our best will prevail. You have a right to become one of us. So, welcome to our world. Very soon the gates to a new dimension will open. 204863. 204863.
That radio drama from 75 years ago is almost assuredly meant to be Orson Welles' dramatic reading of War of the Worlds, a story about aliens invading and taking over the planet. I don't think the Swede is trying to say aliens are here per se, perhaps demons from hell, but I think this is more about fueling the atmosphere of paranoia, as well as maybe something more meta. As usual, we will get more into that when we walk through the game. You could say almost everything in this trailer has a double meaning. This might be the first time in the game you were exposed to a language other than English, but it certainly won't be the last. Kojima has said in interviews post-release that an understanding of 7 languages was required to solve PT, and he wanted players from all over the world to work together to solve it. He probably chose to have this broadcast be in Swedish for this reason, but YouTuber Marcy theorized that it was actually made to get Pewds' attention. Kojima has done more wacko shit than that. I doubt I will ever say earnestly that that idea is too weird for Kojima. That does it for characters that we are reasonably sure exist in only one form. Now let's go over the more ethereal, spirit-like entities that live in the house. God, I love this stupid game. The very first room of PT, the concrete one you wake up in at the beginning of the game, feels like it was pulled from a different location, or a different universe, as some have postulated. It's dark, sterile, and scraped out. Womb or birth symbolism is often hard to talk about because it's gross and weird, but this is just too obvious. You start the game in a barren, cold box and descend indefinitely down a twisted corridor? Come on. The only other objects present in the concrete room are a small wooden table and our friend, the bloodied bag. So, this is exactly what it sounds like. A brown paper bag, maybe a foot tall, 4 inches deep, filled with something. This is one of the most persistent questions of PT. Guesses range from an aborted fetus, to a head, to a liver, to a penis. Nobody knows. If I had to guess, I'd say it's some part of Norman, but I can't say what body part with any modicum of confidence. I don't think it's very important anyway. The important part is that the bag talks to you. When you end up back in that room, either by death or that scheduled crash, you can walk up to the bag, and he gives you some cryptic insight into the world. Let's listen.
I walked. I could do nothing but walk. And then I saw me walking in front of myself. But it wasn't really me. Watch out. The gap in the door. It's a separate reality. The only me is me. Are you sure the only you is you?
We will get into the implications of that later. Just know that this voice seems to be the same as the one that shows up during the final puzzle. At certain random moments, the player hears a reversed, pitch-shifted voice that gives more ciphered clues on how to solve the last loop. I think we can say that whoever this is, he's trying to help us. Maybe this person is also trapped in the hallway. Maybe you both are prisoners of a sadistic, vengeful warden. There is another major character we need to discuss. The exact role he plays isn't fully understood, and I'm not even sure what his name is. For this video, I'm going to refer to him as Jay. There are 2 possible clues in the game for the name of this character. One is Jack, which is found in the final loop. One of those reversed audio clips says, "I walked till I stood 1 pace before Jack." However, this is actually just a hint to help you solve the last puzzle. The second possible clue is in the planned game crash. After you solve the red hallway puzzle, your game will pretend to crash and show you one of 6 error screens. Some mention bugs in the game, others are simple phrases like, "I'm headed there now." But one of these messages is signed simply with the letter J. Again, we're not sure exactly what this J stands for, which is a bummer because it's needed to solve a part of the final puzzle I keep going on about. You must say the name into a microphone plugged into your PlayStation controller. My hero, Bob from The Great Debate and Bob Vids, posited that the name was Jareth, based on some reverse engineering of those 2 important sets of numbers shown in the teaser, But since then, Kojima's come out and said that these number sets actually mean something else. I'm comfortable saying that this character's name at least starts with J, but I'm not confident going any further. So, after all that pretense, what is J's role in our nightmare? If we think about PT as a haunted house, or one of those mazes at Fright Nights, then Norman is me, walking through the maze, Lisa is the teenager inside trying to scare me, and Jay is the dude who designed the attraction. Now, there's nothing in the game that says Jay created the hallway, but he does seem to have power there. His voice speaks from the radio, the fetus, and the crash screen. In the red hallway loop, we hear him inciting a man to murder, and at the very end of the game, it is Jay who calls us on the phone, beckoning from his dark, unplaceable realm. The other thing about Jay is that it's hard to say if he's like a person. Lisa is a murdered wife. You are a video game protagonist. Jay seems to be more of a spiritual force at this point. He is the thing that convinces husbands to kill their families. He is the voice calling from hell. But he is also probably one of the victims of these familicides. Jay is really complicated. Some people prefer to think of the radio, fetus, red hallway loop guy, and telephone guy as different entities that just happen to have the same voice. And that's totally fine. Art in general and Silent Hill specifically are all about interpretation. I think the game makes more sense if all of these people are connected, but I get if that's not the conclusion some people draw. I hope I haven't lost you. Explaining this game often feels like trying to hold running water. The ambiguity and mystery of the teaser can be frustrating, but to me, it's also the most alluring part. It's a rustling seen out of the corner of your eye, disappearing once you turn to look at it. With all the characters taken care of, I think I'll call it for now. Next time we will get into the gameplay, the trailer you unlock after beating the game, and the reaction from the gaming world, both in general and in the Silent Hill fandom. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end, and I hope you're looking forward to the rest of the series as much as I'm looking forward to showing it to you. Special thanks to my brother Cameron for doing some of the voiceover work for this video, and to my friend Hektor Martinez for letting me use a couple of his songs, including the one playing right now. I am so lucky and thankful to have these talented people in my life to collaborate with. So, you know the drill. Like it if you liked it, subscribe if you want to get in on the ground floor of this, and please share it if you know someone who might be interested. Be good, and I'll see you all later.